I'll just be following up on that. I'm covering chapters, strangely, 3 and 9. Okay, so, but I think it'll fit. So the last time that Manolo came to town, I picked him up at the airport, and every time I pick him up, it would be a geyser of stories of people he talked to on the plane. It was like the people that we waited for the bag, and then he presented to them the Matrix. He always called it with me the Matrix. In the book, it's the map of motivations. But in common parlance with Manolo, it was just the Matrix. And he was a man on a mission to present this idea that there is a kind of dynamism potentially found in our work. And if we can discover that, it will just take us further and further along the road of real development. And so in the book we're discussing today, Manolo's voice is just unmistakable. Rereading it is moving. You know, that it's the same sense of enthusiasm. And you also hear how Manolo would deal with skeptics. When he met a person who was skeptical, he treated it like a treasure. He was very respectful when people disagreed with him, and he took it seriously. And he actually grew as a result of that, and his theories grew as a result of that. He and you see this in the book. For instance, the opening paragraphs of chapter 9, he has this conversation in Valencia with a law student. And after hearing about the map of motivations, this law student stood up and said, "This is way too idealistic." And he said that it's that trying to achieve a meaningful work-life balance was a colossal and unattainable goal. And it's hard enough to find a job. To find the ideal job, which is not what Manolo's talking about, but to find an ideal job, well, that's impossible. And in a way, you can see how that impacted Manolo, that he keeps coming back to it and trying to see, like, what was it that he was missing so he could communicate with this kind of skeptic. And he got this great key in this 2019 conference that Manolo organized at AAI, and Michael Steger was there. And he was talking about the idea that you could have a job, a career, or a calling. And something clicked with Manolo. He finally said, I am not being too idealistic. There is a pathway here, and that's what he's trying to help everyone to see. There's a pathway. And so he saw that this roadmap, or this matrix, was anchored in realism. He rejected the idea that some people are stuck in meaningless jobs. While admitting that there could be jobs with really objective difficulties, he believed that any ethical job was open to this higher purpose, that you could find a pathway higher within it. So in chapter 8, he presents the idea of the compass, of how you progress from the job to career to calling. But chapter 9 is this really the inner dynamism at work. And the dynamism, basically the process is this. When we commit to working at our best, we unleash this process of growth. And every one of us, in some way, can be more committed to working at our best. And he'd quote this Castilian poet who said that doing things well is more important than doing them. So if we seek to do our job well, that job will become a career and a calling. There's this inner pathway. And he called this unfolding process the logic of love. By logic, he means this positive attitude that then gives rise to love and all its consequences. And that's contrasted with the logic of fear, which is a negative attitude that gives rise to fear and its consequences. And then he loved this idea of logic. I mean, Thomas Baviera-Puch, he also is one to talk about this, but he and Manolo were up one line. This idea of there's an unfolding process. And that's what he called it, that's why he called it logic. As if by logical, there's just like one axiom follows another in this logical progression. And that is the essence of the logic of love. So if a person is in a job that they find meaningless, Manolo would say their first task then is to find the good that is in that job. And that's realism, not idealism. And one can always come to love one's work, and because you can appreciate the good that it contains. And love is the response to the good. And so if you focus on that good, this pathway emerges. So love for one's job means appreciate the good that it has, even with its limitations. So I'll just read this passage. It's true that in many cases, the job we have does not match our deepest personal desires or abilities. What I want to underline here is that having a job is something good in itself. Being optimistic, having a positive attitude towards the job, is something you can freely decide upon, even in the worst possible scenario. This awareness of the good means having a job can be a source of a certain peace, courage, and joy for any employed person, because it provides some basic material goods, even if it's not the ideal job. So that striving to do that job well to the best of our ability opens up this new path. To paraphrase then the first practical tip in chapter 3, stop and reflect on how well you work. Look at your workmanship and see if you can find within yourself the desire to work better. So that is the key to how to approach a job. Just ask yourself, how can my workmanship improve? What would it look like to do this job better? And we start to find then new ways that our job can stretch us. We start to find new adventures in our job, however humble they may be. And the more humble the adventures are, the more frequently we can find them, and so all the better. So he draws this connection between the ability to discover these adventures and having a spirit of humility. That humility is what allows us to recognize our strengths and weaknesses and that of our job. He says, it may sound bizarre, but humility is a key quality that makes growth possible. So any person who strives to work their best in the job is already going beyond what it takes to earn just a paycheck. They're transcending the logic of exchange and duty. Trying to work well in your job starts to actually place you on this journey of advancement and achievement. And that's precisely how work is viewed when you see it as a career. So when we think of what's needed to advance in our career, then we think of skills or sets of skills that are required. And those are the skills that make us adept at accomplishing particular goals in our work. And Manuel anchors this in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as Dominic mentioned. So when people are just focused on receiving a paycheck, when work is viewed only as a job, they're addressing the lowest levels in Maslow's hierarchy, food and shelter. Again, that undoubtedly that's really important. But one does need to look beyond that. Because if you're always just thinking about the paycheck, you're living in threat mode, right? You're living in the logic of fear. The answer is not to be ever more secure. The answer is to be advancing, to be progressing, so that one's motivations are always aiming higher. And so he talks about how when we start building our skills, well then we satisfy these higher level needs for affiliation and achievement. But then, he talks about work as being work well done is the key to psychological growth. And then it sets the stage to work having an even higher purpose, that we can start to move beyond skills. Move beyond the skills we're developing to how we are developing as a person. And then we move from psychological growth to a moral or spiritual growth. So he has another practical tip, which is the key transitioning from work as a career to work as a calling. Keep asking yourself whether your work is helping you attain a higher purpose in your life. The career mindset is great for helping us to take work seriously. But its limitation is that it's more focused on career advancement than personal advancement. And the solution is how to discover how your work can bring out your best. So when you go home at night, does the way you work during the day help you to give your best to those that you're closest to? The way we work, Manuel says, is the way we live. And so we want to find deeper meaning in our work. We have to see, is our work contributing to our growth in ideals? And by ideals, he means virtues that you are deliberately aiming to attain. So an ideal is a virtue that you aspire to. It's not necessarily the habit you have, that's the virtue. It's what you're aspiring to. It's the kind of growth goal that you're setting for yourself. And what makes it an ideal is that it's inexhaustible. So when you seek to grow in ideals, you move beyond the categories of the useful and the pleasant to the moral. According to Aristotle, which of course we know this, you mentioned, you love quoting Aristotle.
Yes.
The prime moment of moral growth is right before you begin the task. You pause and just ask yourself, what kind of noble quality or can I aim to practice in what I'm about to do? You need an image of the koan, the beautiful and noble, before you start something. And that's what ideals give us.
So in chapter 3, Manuel discusses how Aristotle and Maslow fit together. And he recounts with his customary modesty that he had underestimated Maslow, and had, because he didn't think that Maslow's self-actualizers were actually not fulfilled. He thought, well, this is just like a psychological thing, but it's not really character. And it was, in fact, a student of his who in class said, haven't you read The Farther Reaches of Human Nature? You know, this posthumous work of Maslow? And Manuel hadn't. So he admitted that, so he went and read it. And he was delighted to discover that, in fact, Maslow's self-actualizers were the same as the virtuous person that Aristotle discussed. They're aware of their limitations, they're not arrogant, they have sincere willingness to learn from others, they can resist popular opinion, they're the best that the human species could. So when we see excellence before these ideals, then we begin to see a new value to the challenges that we face. When things are difficult for us, ironically, we actually have the best ability to grow. He says, ironically, challenges are the path to a richer and more satisfying life. Happiness comes from living out our ideals to the fullest, and challenges are the way to do it. In fact, because work is a hinge on which life turns, the growth that we attain while working applies not just to work, but to every area of our lives. When we see challenges as opportunities, the workplace becomes the natural situation for personal growth. But just when you think you reach the peak with Manuel, he says, wait, there's more. There's always another level. And this is the same idea. Because the highest ideal is love. Love is the logic that drives the growth in all ideas. Doing things for love in the professional world means service. And through this service, we actually build true bonds with those around us. So the question we can ask ourselves before starting any task, to go from a calling to something higher, is what bonds with others can I develop by giving my best to those tasks? When we aim to build bonds, our work becomes transcendent, because we transcend ourselves. The highest ideal is love, and love is the bond between ourselves and others, and with the other. And that's how we can all come to experience work and the higher quality. It has the quality of a summoning that we receive to transcend ourselves, to give ourselves in the service of others. And those of us who do know, you look as a man who always put people ahead of projects. He was the happiest when he was helping others and developing bonds with them. So just I'll close saying, the practical questions in chapter 3 are my favorite parts of the thought. They tie together everything. It's not only because that's where he mentions me and ultimate thing, but I encourage you to send up that. But it's because here he asks the questions that can help anyone progress from having a job to having a career to finding your true calling. And I'll just repeat them. First, stop and reflect on how well you work. Look at your workmanship and see if you can find within yourself the desire to work better. Second, keep asking yourself whether your work is helping you attain a higher purpose in your life. And third, what bonds with others can I develop by giving my best in this task? Skills, ideals, thoughts. That is the path of growth. First.